Welcome to another episode of Pairing Report Card. In this episode, we're going over Hwo and Nevsky. Hwo and Nevsky together make one of the highest single target skill damage commander pairings in the game. With both having the highest skill damage factor among cavalry commanders for single targets, and having an insane amount of skill damage boost between Hwo's 3rd and Nevsky's 4th skill, they can put out a ton of damage quickly. However, you do make some sacrifices with this pairing. Most notably, Hwo doesn't have a lot of defensive stats, only having his defense buff here, and Nevsky does provide a good amount of health to his allies, but overall you do have some tanky sacrifices, as well as sacrificing your ability to support allies because you have no AoE buffs, and the only debuff you provide is a single target defense debuff, which is a lot less significant than the likes of Joan or William. But overall, this is a great option, especially if you're going to also use Joan in the field in the secondary pairing, and it gets an A- from me. Welcome to another episode of Pairing Report Card. In this episode, we're covering Hwo and Joan. Hwo and Joan is actually the pairing I prefer overall for these two commanders based on what I've seen. Because you have a great skill damage commander in Hwo, who also gives skill damage boosts in the first 15 seconds, and you have Joan, who has a skill recast that can go every 10 seconds. That first 15 seconds of battle, when you get those first 2 double casts at the start and at 10 seconds, are going to put out an insane amount of damage, which should hopefully end your combat. You can start the cycle all over again. Overall, the only real weakness here is you don't have a ton of tankiness, but you do have a good amount of normal attack damage to help resist being swarmed, and a good amount of counterattack damage to help resist being swarmed as well. And having a ton of AoE damage helps you put out more damage, so even if you do get swarmed, you tend to have a more even trade. But overall, this commander pairing gives an A from me. What commander pairing should I do next? Let me know in the comments. Welcome to Pairing Report Card, where we grade pairings based on their ability to perform in the meta and how well they fit their own personal abilities. In this episode, we have a double feature. We have Joan Prime Nevsky and Nevsky Joan Prime. Both pairings are excellent with high damage output, support through Joan Prime, great mobility through both commanders, and very impressive rage generation, allowing you to get several skills off quickly. The difference in pairing choice is based on your preference. Nevsky is typically the primary when you want more damage output, while Joan Prime is the primary when you want to have more survivability with the access to the support tree. But overall, both pairings get an excellent rating of A. What commander pairing should I do next? Let me know in the comments. It might end up being our next pairing report card. And as always, good luck, fight well, and I will see you on the battlefield. Welcome to another episode of Pairing Report Card. In this episode, we're going to be covering Joan Prime William. Joan Prime William is one of my favorite underrated pairings because the prevalence of Joan Prime William is not nearly as much as that of Joan Prime Nevsky. But between the two of them, they have a defense buff, several rage buffs, on top of the fact that they gain their own rage through the use of the support tree when you use Joan Prime as a primary, allowing her to get even more skill uses and even more support for your allies. Because of this, I typically call Joan Prime William the mega support for cavalry because of the sheer amount of AoE support they give. Overall, the only thing that really is a downside of using this pairing is the damage isn't quite as good as Joan Nevsky, but that being said, it's more than made up for in the actual supports provided by both the commanders. So overall, this pairing gets a B+. What pairing should I cover next? Let me know in the comments. And as always, good luck, fight well, and I'll see you on the battlefield. Welcome to another episode of Pairing Report Card. In this episode, we go over Scipio Prime and Alexander. Scipio Prime Alexander makes an excellent field option for most players, especially free-to-play, with Alexander being available early in the game and easy to max because of that, and Scipio Prime only needing to be 5551 to be super useful in the field, as well as giving you room to max him and eventually get the additional damage reduction on his 4th skill if you so please. Between they're both having debuffs of the increased damage taken by Alexander, and the AoE health debuff, and both having shields that can make use of Alexander's passive giving himself more defense, this ends up being one of the tankier marches even for infantry. And overall, it gets an A- from me. What pairing should I do next? Let me know in the comments. Welcome to another episode of Pairing Report Card. In this episode, we go over Jan and Hera. Jan Hera is the Garrison right now, and even with Dido being new, Jan is still ridiculously strong. Between his AoE, the attack damage reduction that he gets, and just overall his ability to resist both 1v1 marches and swarm, he is strong on his own. Add in Hera, who is amazing with mixed troops, giving yourself a very high level of forgiveness, and Jan's cavalry tree not requiring all cavalry for any specific talents, and you get one of the most versatile garrisons in the game, this side of Xeno YSS. Overall, this is one of the best pairings for pretty much every situation, and is pretty forgiving as well for even formations. So this gets an A+ for me in the top rank for all garrisons. What garrison should I do next? Let me know in the comments. Welcome to another episode of Pairing Report Card. In this episode, we're covering Jan YSS. Jan YSS, while not as good as Jan Hera, is still a very solid garrison. And if you were just getting back into garrisons after the Xeno YSS meta, and are just trying to get a good jump, this is a great place to start. Jan YSS is great because it has very limited cavalry-only stats. It is forgiving taking mixed troops, and it does very excellently against Swarm and against enemies trying to reinforce a rally, allowing you to pick up a bunch of extra value with YSS's AoE, as well as Jan's. Overall, the only weakness that this pairing really has is that YSS is not Hera, but both are pretty decent, and although Hera is the better option, this is a solid option and gets a very solid A- from me. What pairing should I do next? Let me know in the comments. Welcome to another episode of Pairing Report Card. In this episode, we're going to be covering Jan Nevsky. While Jan also does resist Swarm very well with his normal attack damage taken reduction on his skills, and the additional health he gains, plus Nevsky's health bonus, this is very much the glass cannon version of Jan. With Jan Nevsky, you get an insane amount of skill damage bonus, as well as the ability to just put out so much damage at once between the defense debuff that helps a 1v1 trade, as well as Jan's naturally high skill damage. When you pair this as well with the skill tree and the cav tree, you're able to put out a lot of damage in a pure cav garrison. The only real weaknesses this garrison has is that it's pretty weak towards Swarm, and is much better in larger buildings because of it. But overall, this pairing gets a B+. What pairing should I do next? Let me know in the comments. Welcome to another episode of Pairing Report Card. In this episode, we cover Jan Jadwiga. Jan and Jadwiga make a decent pair together and are one of the natural pairings at the start of the release for Jan. Jan puts out a good amount of damage, has an AoE and normal attack damage reduction, which helps Jadwiga's general weakness to Swarm, but it's not nearly as good as Jan YSS or Jan Heraclius. However, with this increased damage, you get a very damage-heavy, very much like Nevsky, but without as much of the weakness to Swarm, as it is slightly better. However, this doesn't do it much to bring him above Nevsky, which still puts Jan Jadwiga at about a high B+ range. What commander should I do next? Let me know in the comments. Welcome to another episode of Pairing Report Card. In this episode, we're going to cover Xeno Flav. Zenobia and Flavius are probably two of the tankiest commanders in Rise of Kingdoms, especially for garrisons. Between Zenobia's ability to reduce damage taken and increase health by an insane amount, as well as the fact that she increases damage on her primary skill, Flavius' ability to reduce damage taken, increase counterattack damage taken, and increase all damage dealt, she's able to put out an insane amount of damage with Flavius, as well as having access to the strongest defensive talent in the game, with Hold the Line, when you can use only infantry. The only real downside of this pairing is using Hold the Line, which is one of the anchor points of this extremely tanky pairing, requires only infantry, which brings this garrison down to an A- rating. What pairing should I do next? Let me know in the comments.